Hello, everyone. So my name is Amal Ben Ali, and I'm the Chief Strategic Planning and Project Management Department at the National Space Science Agency. I'm delighted to welcome everyone to this special virtual gathering to showcase an interesting initiative to send an experiment to space, with particular emphasis on ideas that are of importance to the Kingdom of Bahrain. I welcome our guests and all of you audience who join us this evening. We hope you will find this event both insightful and inspiring. So to have a smooth virtual event, we appreciate if you switch off your mics and cams. We will be more than happy to receive your questions in the chat. This event is hosted by the National Space Science Agency in partnership with Clever Play Education and Training, Orbital Space, and Starlab Oasis. So please allow me to briefly introduce NSSA. The National Space Science Agency, NSSA, was established by a royal decree to fulfill His Majesty's vision in the space field. And NSSA has the following 6 strategic goals as part of our current strategic plan for 2019 up to 2023. As for the first goal, to promote space science, technology, and application in the kingdom, we have organized many local events, collaborated with institutes on research projects. We have also organized several stakeholder workshops. And tonight's event is in line with this to enhance innovation. It's really this event to spark interest and for your institute to be the first to send a Bahraini experiment to space and become a pioneer in this field. For the second goal, to build the capacity in the field of satellite building, operations, data and images processing and analysis. Some of the examples mentioned below include attending postgraduate studies in the UK and UAE in relevant fields, attending specialized courses in India and Russia for nanosatellite assembly and others in Netherlands for satellite data and images processing analysis, working on projects that achieve knowledge transfer. Most notably is having the Bahrain Space team work on building 2 CubeSats as part of their studies in the UAE, Dhabisat, which was launched in February, and Light 1, recently launched. For the third goal, the National Space Policy, a copy can be found on our website, and we are in the progress to develop with relevant stakeholders the National Space Law to regulate space initiative activities in the kingdom. And to support the national efforts in the space sector, we have partnered with many international space organizations and research centers, some of which are below. We have strong collaboration with the Saudi Space Commission and JAXA. Local MOUs include Bahrain Polytechnic, UOB, AGU, Batilco, IGA, STA, Tamkeen, among others. NSSA also completed government needs analysis of space information and Earth observation data and continuously refining these requirements. We have also started offering services as part of our Satellite Data Analysis Center to fulfill needs. We are also proud that the Kingdom is a member of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, in addition to the IAF, which is the biggest space organization worldwide. We have also completed signing 3 of 5 main international space treaties developed under the UN governing activities in the exploration and use of outer space. And we are currently working on the following 4 initiatives to fulfill our goals, mainly the Data Analysis Center, building nanosatellites and remote sensing satellites, also to have our own ground station in the kingdom. And you can visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter. And you can also follow us on our social channels, such as in Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, to know more about NSSA. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to introduce the NSSA. And within the next hour, we shall be learning together about the successful story of sending an experiment to space from Kuwait, as we will hear from Malak and Omar the details of their journey, followed by further examples for space experiments and how Bahrain can be involved in this voyage from Starlab Oasis. This event will be concluded with a Q&A sessions, so make sure to stay and ask your own curious questions to our speakers. I will now leave the floor to Professor Nada Shamari. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Nada.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to NSSA for having us here with you today. I'm going to get started by actually passing you over to Dr. Bassam El-Fili. He is the General Manager of Orbital Space, our company that we're going to share the really exciting opportunities with you in regards to the experiment in space. And with that, I'm just going to pass you over to Dr. Bassam, and I'm going to join you briefly after he shares the information with you. Bassam.
Thank you, Nada. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa massakum Allah bil khair. Orbital Space is a startup company based in Dubai, the UAE. And we are very passionate about space and spreading and encouraging the GCC countries. So yes, we are based in Dubai, UAE, but we're actually our scope is the entire GCC country, and even beyond that, all Arab countries. Before I get into the details, I would like to thank the NSSA for inviting us to this info session. We are actually very proud of all the achievements that been done under the umbrella of the NSSA in Bahrain, especially the recent CubeSat missions and many accomplishments that we are very proud of, and we're very honored and humbled to partner with NSSA in doing more activities and projects. We also have relationships with MBRC, Markaz Mohammed bin Rashid Al Fada, and we're also working with entities in Saudi, in Oman, and now we're also in discussion with Qatar. So as I mentioned, our scope is not only one country, but actually GCC and even more beyond that. Because we are passionate about this area, our success is to make as much successful project in this domain from as many countries as possible. So Orbital Space was created for this specific purpose, to support and help new universities or new student projects that they are interested in joining or working on space missions or space projects, but maybe they need some guidance or support or help. We would provide that support and help. Why? Because we do have the experience. We have actually two space missions that we have under our umbrella. Also, one advantage we have also, because we are from the region, يعني احنا من الكويت, فنعرف we know the culture, we know the language, so we can give support also within that as well. So just to brief you that the first mission, or the first space mission, we actually was done in partnership with the Scientific Center in Kuwait, and it was done as a competition, national competition in Kuwait for students in high school and university level, to come up with ideas for Kuwait's first experiment to space. And of course, we had the winners with us, which are Malak and Umar, and they will tell you all about their journey in this initiative. And then the launch of their experiment was done in late 2020, specifically December 6, 2020. And then after that, we also had another mission, which was a CubeSat mission. This mission was Kuwait's first CubeSat, and it was called Qumar al-Kuwait. And the purpose of this CubeSat is also educational, and it's open to all students from around the world to benefit from. Basically, we made it a platform for an initiative we called Code in Space, which allows students from around the world to write their own code and then upload this code to the satellite and command and control the satellite. Once they complete their testing of their code, we will actually give them a certificate saying that their code has actually been tested with real space hardware in a satellite that's actually orbiting around Earth. That's what we are all about. We are here to help you and support you, and we are very honored to work with NSSA to make this happen in the Kingdom of Bahrain. So we really hope that the first science experiment from Bahrain going to space will be coming soon through one of the universities or research institutes in Bahrain. We are here to support you and help you. So with that, I will hand it back to Nada Shimiri, my business partner and the director of educational programs and outreach at Orbital Space. Nada, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Bassam, and thanks again to NSSA, and thank you all for joining us today. I want to, before I introduce Malak and Omar and let them start sharing their real world experience with you, I wanted to also share a little bit about other things that we can support you with Orbital Space, including our summer camps that we run for kids as young as 9 and for students up to even 28 years old. And some of those summer camps, we're going to go through things like astronaut training, mission training, space challenges, and they include things like software, hardware, building satellite, ground stations. And inshallah, those are opportunities that we're going to share more information about with you in the next couple of weeks. But for now, I want to share with you these really wonderful, amazing young people who have inspired us through their journey over a year with us in the experiment to space, Kuwait's first experiment to space and first experiment to the International Space Station. Malak Abdullah and Omar Qamariya, or some would say his name was meant to be some space-related field. So Malak and Omar are the students who led the experiment in space. They are the ones that came up with everything from A to Z. They designed the experiment. We were, of course, there with them, supporting them in their as their project developed and giving them guidance and advice. But they are actually the students, whilst they were in high school, of course, now they are in their second year, I want to say second year of university. Both are studying in the USA right now. But at the time that they did the experiment, actually, they were in high school. So they designed the scientific experiment while they were in high school, and they took it all the way through to its successful end in the beginning of 2021. So with that, I'm going to pass you over to Malak Abdullah and Omar Qamariya.
Hello, everyone. My name is Malak Abdullah, and I'm very glad and honored to be here. As Nada mentioned, I'm based in California, specifically San Diego. I'm a second-year undergraduate student at the University of California in San Diego, also known as UCSD. And here I'm studying human biology. I graduated from high school in Kuwait in the class of 2020, as well as Omar. And I'll let Omar introduce himself as well.
Hi everyone, my name's Omar. I was in high school with Malak in Kuwait when we won the experiment space competition together. I'm currently in New York City, Columbia University, studying a mix of computer science, economics, and sustainable development. And I'm really excited to share my experiences with you and get you all to want to participate in these great experiments without having any hesitation.
So maybe with that, I can just jump in and ask you guys to share how you got involved with Experiments in Space to begin with.
Yes, for sure. So in this competition known as Experiment in Space, Ahmed and I were able to submit an idea of ours, and we, alhamdulillah, we won. This was the first competition that was taking place, and it was the first time this competition was taking place, and we had only heard about it during the second semester of our last year in high school. There was, of course, a lot of effort that went into planning this experiment after we were announced as the winners, and it took a lot of patience as well. I admit that it was all very new to us, to myself and Ahmed, with the time that it started, but slowly we started to figure it out. And once I actually realized that everything we needed to make this experiment succeed was actually not so far out of reach. All it really took for us was a little pushing and, believing. Things started to gradually fall in place. And so we kicked it off with starting to define what our passions were, what my passions were, what Ahmed's passions were. And we kind of took those interests and we combined them. I was very interested. I've always been interested in biology and the sciences, and Ahmed had a lot of experience with climate change in the past, working in that field. And we decided to take those two subjects and passions and combine them into our project idea. And that.
Sorry to interrupt, Malak here, but maybe to highlight, when you first heard about the announcement that there is this such opportunity to send an experiment to space, what went through your mind? Did you think that this was something easy, or was it difficult? Did you think that, do you have a chance in that? What made you submit the application?
Yes, of course. So Ahmed and I, in high school, we ran a club known as the Science National Honor Society. And part of the goals for the Science National Honor Society was to make sure that we were aware of all kinds of STEM-related activities, whether it be in school or out of school, like those that were taking place at the time. And so, we were keeping an eye out on all of those opportunities. And so once we heard about the Experiment in Space competition taking place, we knew that this was something that we needed to bring to the society. And we wanted as many students from our school to participate. And Ahmed and I, that's when we partnered up, and that's when we came up with our idea, our project proposal. We submitted it, and it was we thought it was a long shot at first, just because the idea of sending an experiment to space was like completely surreal. Like, we didn't know that this was something that was even like within our reach, or like within our hands. Like, and we we took the opportunity. We submitted our ideas along with a lot of other students who also submitted their ideas, either as individual projects or teams as well. And there was a lot of nerves that we had during the presentation when we were proposing our idea during the competition. And I cannot explain to you how amazing that feeling was when Dr. Bassam said that the E. coli project, which is our project, was the winner. And I think there was a lot of check marks that our project checked, with, like, in terms of feasibility and practicality. Or a proposal was one that seemed to be legit and valid to send to the experiment, to send to the ISS. And yeah, that experience was really truly something else. It was like a wave of a wave of surprise and shock, and I'm sure Ahmad also felt that same way. But yeah, I definitely encourage you to submit any ideas that you might have, and hopefully you will get to experience the same thing as well.
Amar, I want to jump in here and ask you maybe to share a little bit, after your experiment got selected, you guys designed and submitted an idea for an experiment. Your idea was selected, which was actually the super easy part, right? You put your idea together, it was selected, and everybody here doesn't know, but maybe we can share that with them too, that the idea was selected in late 2019. So in 2020 was the time where the students should work on their experiment and idea and do their preparations to actually be able to send the experiment to space. Maybe Omar, you can jump in here and tell us a little bit about what happened in 2020.
Yeah, so as you said, like being ranked first in the nation for our experiment was the easy part. The hard part came when the execution came down. Not only because as high school students, we hadn't really had much of experience within the scientific field in terms of real life applicability and real life experience. So we were now working with a company, managing expectations, meeting specific deadlines. And, there's a learning curve to it, especially when you've been in a system where you have to learn theoretical stuff and theoretical knowledge. Now it's like the real world. You have to apply some things you learned in school, some things you learned outside of school, and you need to do something with it that matters. So that was a challenge at first, but obviously we all know what happened in 2020, like the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And it did cause some complications, but we did work around them. Instead of having meetings together as a team at the scientific center, we shifted to an online format, but we still kept in touch and kept managing expectations and making sure we were meeting all of the deadlines. And then with COVID-19 came also the complications with lab accessibility, but that was alleviated through perseverance, honestly, and just consistent work ethic. Yeah, but although there were a lot of like obstacles, I would say it felt super rewarding to have the successes we did, even if it was tiny successes. And I will say that although the goal was to have a very successful experiment that matters and would benefit the scientific community, I definitely saw the experiment in space experience, and I could say,
You're muted, Emma.
yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I was saying that Malak and I saw the experiment in space competition and experience as a whole as more of a means than an ends, because we did want to have a successful experiment, but at the same time, it was like this whole learning process and this exposure we were getting into just doing real life work, I think was invaluable. And although like now I don't work in the lab sector or like in that field, I would definitely say it has taught me a lot of technical knowledge and skills that I can apply in any field I choose to endeavor into. So overall, yeah, lots of obstacles, getting over them, super rewarding. And those obstacles should not seem daunting to anyone thinking about going into this experiment or just taking chances in life in general, because I mean, we miss 100% of the shots we don't take, so might as well give it a shot.
So Omar, beyond the science, the E. coli and learning about bacteria, and the finding, what happened to the bacteria in space, what would you say you got out of this learning experience? You know, you went through the journey from formulating an idea, then defending your idea in front of a judging panel, going to winning, you know, the competition, and then going through the journey from preparing your experiment and going through the challenges. What would you say that you learned out of this educational experience? Something, you know, beyond just the science.
Right. Yeah, this was a very multi-dimensional process, and there's a lot of rewards that came out of it. I would say a very important thing to highlight was improved oral and written communication skills. We had to prepare documents for NASA to have published on their website. So we needed to make sure everything was top-notch quality, basically, and we ensured that. And Malak and I had to like with the presentation from start to finish, from like the early stages of us pitching our project to weekly meetings, updating the team. I think we we did learn a lot about how to communicate effectively, to keep an audience engaged while being efficient in terms of not oversharing but not undersharing, just giving the right amount of information based on who you're speaking with. So I would definitely say improved written and oral communication was definitely a positive thing that came out of this experience.
And Malak, anything you want to add? Is anything you want to share about your learning journey?
Yeah, I think, I learned a whole lot about the experimental design process and applying the scientific method. Like, we learn a lot about that in the classroom, but I think for me to be able to apply it firsthand was definitely a learning experience. I think it's one thing to be able to learn about, certain STEM classes in high school, um, but to be able to kind of, work on the fronts of it and see what we could actually get out of it. That was, to me, something that was very rewarding and something that I was able to help me with what I'm, doing now. I learned the most during the stage where we had to design the experiment and come up with the procedures. As we, had to think, I think Ahmad mentioned this a little bit earlier, we had to think of, as many alternatives as possible to every approach we came up with, because let's say our approach A didn't work, we would need approach B as a backup. And if approach B didn't work, we need approach C as a backup plan. And I think we experienced that a couple of times during the journey. But yeah, I think for me, the most important part of it all was being able to take everything that I've learned in high school and see that, a lot of it could be applicable, and a lot of it is actually applied to real life experiments. And to be able to see that was definitely going to add to my, skill set of what I was planning to pursue in the future.
Now, of course, Malak, you were lucky to actually be there during the launch of the experiment. Can you maybe tell the audience about your experience with the viewing the launch right there and see it before your eyes?
Yeah, honestly, I was very lucky to have been there. I would have loved for the rest of the team to be there with me as well. Um, you know, being next to the vehicle assembly building, which is, probably the first thing that will pop up when you search Kennedy Space Center, NASA. And, just being right in front of it and seeing the launch take place before your eyes is something that, I thought I would have never experienced before. And just to like hear the loud noise and see it take off, and to know that something that you worked on is riding that rocket, then that's just something that was very, very surreal. And to have been there, it was honestly a privilege to be able to also, interact with people that I've been working there on projects for years and years. I think that for me also helped me expand, my knowledge as well. I recall, even knocking on like some certain doors at the Kennedy Space Center and talking to like different people about what they've been working on. And I learned a lot about some of their own projects as well, and some of the projects that we're actually writing with our experiment to the ISS. And I think to recall specifically, I met somebody that was like managing this project about opening kind of like another doorway. Like it was a piece of infrastructure that was riding the rocket to space, and to like see how excited he was that something that he worked on was being sent to space. It was like, oh yeah, me too. Like this is something that I'm experiencing as well, and to like be able to kind of relate to someone like that was something else that was truly truly rewarding. And yeah, it was amazing.
So Omar, when we first received the photos and the videos of the experiment from space, can you tell us how did you feel when you first saw those photos and videos from space?
It was super exciting, super surreal. Like when they sent the pictures on the group, I was like, is this Photoshop or is this real? Because I didn't believe it. But yeah, it was super exciting. And honestly, the amount of pride I had was really, really immense, because we've worked so hard on this project for like over a year since its launch. So just seeing that felt super rewarding. And I was updating people on social media about our progress. So the second we got those pictures, straight to social media, get the people to be excited as well about our accomplishments. And yeah, felt super rewarding, super surreal.
Very, very good, excellent. And maybe either Malak or Omar, you can also talk about after the end of your experiment and the return, how the media reacted and all the interviews and the things you have to speak about to the media. Also maybe to tell the audience about that.
We got a few interviews on local news sources in Kuwait, which was exciting. It was very new to us. Although, there is a need for more media coverage of scientific achievements and experiments. For people with no prior experience in that field, it was very it felt daunting at first, but it was also super eye-opening, and it was just nice to see that people cared about it. And I think that's something else we learned about was effective communication again, depending on who you're with. So we had to basically communicate effectively by trying to simplify information so that it wasn't too much or too boring on TV, but also we wanted to have people understand what we were working on. And it was an overall positive response, I would say.
I'm sorry to interrupt here, but I'm just curious about the experiment itself. Could you just shed some light about it? I mean, what was it? How did you do it? I mean, of course, you will have like an experiment here on Earth and another in the space. If you just can shed some light, because among the audience, we have also academics, we have students in the universities that I'm sure they are curious to know. So
Yeah, of course. It's a very valid question. So using, principles of synthetic biology, of climate change, the experiment that we sent to the International Space Station really focused on the effect that microgravity or weightlessness uh, did or did not have on E. coli bacteria that has been genetically modified to be able to eat up carbon dioxide and use that carbon dioxide in their diet as a food source. This as I mentioned earlier, was a study of like, sustainability, of climate change, sustainability, synthetic biology, microbiology. So it was an interdisciplinary study of all of those subjects. And, after we were able to get a sample of this genetically modified bacteria, which has, been modified for the first time in scientific history, to be able to consume carbon dioxide in that way, we began culturing it in Kuwait University's lab and started to prepare it for the launch to space in a tube known as a Mix-6. And I don't know if we could pull up a picture of that, but it was like a silicone-like tube. I think it was around 8 to 10 milliliters, and we, separated it into 3 different compartments. I think we had one compartment that had the bacteria and its growth media, and then another one with the media itself that it's allowed to grow in, and then finally a last compartment with carbon dioxide in it. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it. There's a lot more detail. But yeah, after we did find out about this bacteria, our game plan was first obtain it, culture it. We would launch it to the ISS on the Falcon 9 Dragon 2 rocket, and then we waited for its return. And upon its return, we then analyzed how much it grew or if it grew at all.
And how long was it in space?
I think it was about 1 month, 1 month and a week, maybe.
So what were the results? What did you find out?
So go ahead, Arma.
Yeah, so basically, I had basically I replicated what was occurring on space in a control tube that was present at Kuwait University with Dr. Leila Vali, and upon like the return of the tube, we actually found that the bacteria was more efficient in consuming carbon dioxide on Earth rather than space. But I honestly didn't see this as a failure because it was, I think it helps us to know where this bacteria grows best. And for now to know that it's more efficient on Earth, we can target that landscape rather than space for that specific experiment. But again, like it was more of a learning curve. So I would say overall, like it was successful in terms of determining where this bacteria grew best, and also for us to grow as scientists and just learners in general.
I think perhaps some other important elements that our audience should maybe know more about also is the timeline for the experiment. Overall, it's about a year. Both Malek and Omar had to submit, Bassam maybe can help me out here, had to submit the final documents to NASA 6 months prior to launch.
Actually, it's 3 months. 3 months before launch, we need to get the approval from NASA to have this payload sent to the International Space Station. There is a reason for that, because the International Space Station have astronauts living there. So they want to make sure that nothing that's being sent there that will impact negatively the safety and the security of the astronaut there. And also overall, the International Space Station, it's a very expensive piece of structure. It's actually the largest satellite ever built by humans, and it's currently orbiting space. So they're very careful about what goes there because of these reasons. And I just also want to highlight that sending experiments to space is to find out what's happening. So it's not about failure and success. It's all about learning, about this new environment and how the experiment behave in such a new environment. So it's all about learning It's not about success or failure.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Bassam and Professor Nada, Malak, and Omar for this very interesting discussion. I believe that knowing that an experiment that came from the Arab countries went to space is really a proud moment. And inshallah, we will have the same proud moment when we have our first Bahraini experiment sent to space. So if you will allow me, we will have our next speaker, which is Engineer Mohammed from Starlab Oasis. So Engineer Mohammed, the floor is all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for being here with us tonight. You know, obviously, first of all, we'd like to thank the NSSA for having us, for organizing this event so that we can explain what we do and try to come up with projects to see, you know, how we can, as you mentioned, have something Bahraini in space, you know, have good research, conduct good research. I'm joined with me as well with our lead engineer, Ben. Ben, if you just want to introduce yourself before I jump into a small presentation we have as well.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for hosting us. It's great to speak with everybody today. I have a background at NASA Kennedy Space Center as well as NASA Langley Space Center. We got the opportunity to do some space payloads specifically with off-Earth agriculture there. I'm really excited to be bringing this to possible Bahraini students, institutions, industries, government. So we're really looking forward to present to you today what we're going to be working on and how we can collaborate moving forward.
Perfect. So I think Malak and Omar really covered a lot of what the essence of, you know, these projects that we want to conduct in space are like. And as you mentioned, also it's, you know, not always about success or failure, but it's also about the learning aspect of it. But what Starlab Oasis does is we put the emphasis on space food, space agriculture. Now, let me just share my screen to give a small presentation. I think everyone can see it now. So I think this presentation will explain better about us at Starlab Oasis. So our motto here at Starlab Oasis is feeding the universe. We understand, you know, it's not an easy task to feed the universe, and we need to get started here on Earth as well. But that is precisely what we do. We plan on tackling, you know, both areas as well. If we take it a step back, we'd also like to mention, you know, our roots, our heritage, and where we came from. So we have a parent company called Voyager Space that is a global leader in space exploration that has, you know, assembled expertise in a variety of space capabilities, including but not limited to propulsion, satellite servicing, etc., just to enable humanity to be able to do complex and significant missions in space. And our sister company, Nanorax, established in 2000, and it has commercial access to low Earth orbits and has sent over 1,200 missions to the ISS from over 34 countries, and they operate and own their own proprietary hardware on the ISS as well that Starlab Oasis, you know, oftentimes is able to access as well. So I think it's very important to showcase that Starlab Oasis, even though we are a very new company, we do have this backing of professionals and expertise for long history in the space environment in the US. Now, how Starlab Oasis came to be was that I believe was it 4 years ago when Hazal Mansouri, the first UAE astronaut, did his maiden flight to the ISS. Nanorax facilitated a couple of experiments for Hazal to take with him and conduct in space, you know, for the Emirati Pride, but also to boost, you know, scientific capacity in the nation. One of them, and the most important one actually, was this date palm germination experiment that you could see in the video here. So what he did was he took a date palm seed, germinated it on the ISS with a control group at the local university here. And then obviously after his mission, both of these samples, the spaceflight sample was returned, analyzed, and compared with the one here on Earth. The findings are still being conducted, but Nanorax and the UAE government started to understand the importance of conducting these missions in in space, to understand how space environments affect plants and how that can be of benefit on Earth. And then from there, Starlab Oasis was born. So as part of financial and non-financial incentives from the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, NanoRax established Starlab Oasis. So we are a fully UAE company. We're Abu Dhabi-based UAE company. And even though we obviously hold very strong ties to our American counterparts, being in this region really allows us to tap into the ecosystem in the UAE. So we hold very good relations with the UAE Space Agency, MBRC, and a lot of local universities as well. But at the same time, the region, because a lot of the American players might not see a need to facilitate, these sort of experiments in this capacity building in other regions. Starlab Oasis being in the Middle East, we want to, expand to this region and bring capabilities that, quite frankly, aren't even available in North America. When we talk space agriculture, it's very limited. Only NASA has conducted some experiments over the time. We also have the Chinese to the Far East that have done experiments, but do not disseminate this information as publicly. So we, as Starlab Oasis, want to be here in this region to provide something different from the usual satellite, small payloads, CubeSats, nanosats, etc. Conduct real science, different experiments, really to usher in this new era of space exploration. Because our mission is to be a leading developer of off-Earth food production systems to sustain future space voyagers, because we believe that humanity, no matter where you are in the universe, whether it's on Earth, on a space station, or another planetary body, you should have access to economically affordable, sustainably grown, and nutritious food, regardless of anything. Now, we've talked a lot about agriculture, space. What is the link? Why does Starlab Oasis link these? Well, this is a video that our general manager, Alan Herbert, was featured by Mubadala. I'm sure all of us in the region are very familiar with Mubadala being, one of the UAE's largest sovereign wealth funds. So it just goes to show that they believe in our mission. They let us explain, in this documentary. And these are the prime reasons. One, research. We just don't know enough about how the spaceflight environment affects anything, honestly, but even plants and other microorganisms, food in general, our information is severely lacking. We need to understand microgravity, radiation, how do all of these affect plant growth in the most fundamental levels? Because quite frankly, if we are to have humanity in these environments, to have sustained presence on the moon, on Mars and beyond, we need to grow our food, we need to grow biopharmaceuticals, etc. And to grow them, we need to understand. It's not as simple as taking a seed from Earth, putting it on the moon, and then saying, voila, it's grown. We need to understand a lot more. But then coming back to applications on Earth, it's been shown that exposing seeds and other microorganisms to a spaceflight environment changes their genetics, a lot of the times giving them more climate adapted traits or traits that are more preferential to farmers and other stakeholders. So using the space environment, we really want to be able to induce this genetic diversity in a lot of plants. Particularly in this example, as we're talking here, understanding maybe which plants are of absolute importance to Bahrain, which maybe are facing the brunt of climate change, etc. Working with those specific crops, sending them up to space, exposing them, and then inducing that genetic diversity that can now be of benefit to local Bahraini farmers or any other sort of endeavors in Bahrain. And then last but not least, tech transfer via vertical farming and others. It's in space, everything needs to work to be able to be pulled off. You can't cut corners. You need to reuse your resources, be very smart with your energy consumption, etc. Whereas on Earth, we often like to, play around with the constraints. So now, once we are able to understand how to best utilize the space environment to get things to work, we immediately transfer them to on-Earth applications as well. And don't take my word for it. A prime example is NASA's biomass production chamber. So NASA, in the 1980s, they wanted to understand how to feed their explorers and their astronauts once in orbit. So they took a decommissioned module, designed it, refurbished it to understand, how to be able to grow plants in these environments. And that was, quite honestly, the first vertical farm in the United States. That has now, all that information was obviously given out to the local community, vertical farms now are a multi-million-dollar industry, only projected to grow. And that was only possible through the advancements that came from NASA. So not only is space super beneficial just to learn and understand and adapt to any changes here, but space agriculture has also been shown, to have a pivotal role in any of the transformative technologies we want back here on Earth. So at Starlab Oasis, our main competency is conducting this research, so in space experiments and on Earth analysis to study this plant growth and diversity. We are currently building our own lab facilities. Like I mentioned, Starlab Oasis is new. We were only fully incorporated last August, hires coming in October. So, we're really hitting the ground running. We signed a lot of understandings and research proposals with a lot of agencies here in the UAE and even globally. And we're also looking to establish our own state-of-the-art laboratory where we can conduct experiments and post-flight analysis of all these, experiments to send up to space. We also hope in the near future, once this dedicated lab facility is established, we can host people from around the world, be it Bahrain, be it anywhere in the South America, other countries in Africa. We want to have this center be an area where people come from all over, conduct their experiments, use our expertise, because although, as Ben mentioned, and our plant scientist, Connor, who isn't with us in the call today, they have expertise and history at NASA and other German space agencies, conducting this research. We just can't know everything about everything. We need to rely on, the local population for different areas to tell us the problems, to tell us what they want to investigate. So we really see space being that playground that can have a lot of international collaboration. And I think among our services and capabilities, one of the most important today is that we are an expert in ag tech payloads, processing and development. So what this means is anywhere in the value chain, from design to ideation to build, producing, facilitating the experiment, and then conducting post-flight analysis, Starlab Oasis has the expertise to tackle anywhere in the middle. So we could, anyone could come up to us and be like, we have an idea about a project we want to conduct. We don't have the expertise, we don't have the access to space, but we have an idea. Starlab Oasis is here to facilitate with our expertise and understanding of what the experiment might entail, what would make sense to look at, what wouldn't make sense to look at, how we can work together to facilitate that, have a project completed to execution up in space, then come back down here on Earth and conduct the analysis, and that's what we're really looking forward to having these projects with Bahraini entities. And educational development cannot be stressed enough. It's the fact that, no one is just born, some people are, to be honest, born wanting, to take space exploration to the next height, etc. But really, it's also about engaging the local youth population to explain to them that space isn't only rockets and satellites, it's everyone now. We need plant scientists, we need other communications engineer, we need geneticists, we need everyone in space. So it's also engaging in the local community. And then last but not least, before I leave my colleague Ben to take over the rest, is to showcase the opportunities that are available in space. So our parent companies, Voyager and Nanoracks, along with Lockheed Martin, were one of only 3 companies to be selected by NASA to develop their own space station for when the ISS is decommissioned in 2027. I know we're all very fond of the ISS, but it's getting old. It's time, to move on to the new era. And we are glad to be a part of, tackling this problem. So like all space stations, there will be different modules on Starlab. That's the name of the space station. Specifically, there will also be one for agriculture-related activity. Now, Starlab Oasis, we were involved in the design for the proposal that went to NASA for the space station. And now that we've won and given the go-ahead to build the station, Starlab Oasis will be handling, the full build, the design, understanding the revenue streams from NASA, non-NASA, astronauts, and payloads, just for all the agricultural activity, commercial and research that needs to take place on the station. Now, just to mention again, though, this is coming up in 2027. That's very far away from now. But Starlab Oasis, we are conducting experiments on the ISS right now. We are not waiting for Starlab to go up. We are conducting experiments now because we can also learn from what happens on the ISS to conduct things in a more efficient and better manner on Starlab to go up. So, the space environment is really opening up. There are a lot of things to do, but we're here really because we have a focus and understand that space agriculture is something that's underinvested in, but is a necessity. You can't have humans in any environment if they don't have the proper nutrition and the proper food. We eat 3 times a day. It's no use going to Mars if once you get there, you don't have a way to sustain yourself. And I think Ben can take over the rest and explain a bit more about other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the great things about Star Lab is that it will require the next generation of scientists and engineers, and just bring everybody on board. As Mohammed said, we need to bring up the next generation. And so that's why we're so excited about our space agriculture student competition. We're teaming up with 2 of our sister companies, DreamUp and NanoRacks. DreamUp has a specialty in working with educational curriculum development. And so we're working with them as well as NanoRacks to make sure that it's launched and properly facilitated on the International Space Station and then eventually on Starlab to design this student competition program in which student teams are going to be able to put together these different agricultural payloads, and we'll be working with them with Starlab Oasis. We'll work with them to help design, and then the winning team will be able to send this to the International Space Station. And this can be done on a number of levels. It can be done at a university level, a high school level, or even younger. One of the great things about plant science and agriculture is that we learn about it at such a young age. And the importance of agriculture is really understood by the world over. We all understand the importance of making sure that we adapt to climate change and the importance of developing food security. So we're really excited to be working with the next generation of agricultural scientists, of chefs, of engineers, of biologists. There's just a huge number of students that can get involved in this. And so we're really looking forward to work with different universities, different schools to make this possible. So this is something that's turnkey. This is something that can be done right now. It's customizable. So, this can be something that's done today. So we're really looking forward to working with you all. And if this is something that you're interested in, let's connect because, this is already developed and we just are ready to have it be unrolled in different universities and different schools. Now, our next slide, in terms of some of the work that's been done, and one of the things that's most exciting and most scary about this field, about space biology and astrobotany as a more specific term, is how new it is. So a lot of these different plants, as you can see, a lot of leafy green vegetables, very easy to just snip off. I have my plant right here. You can just kind of snip off a leaf and eat it. I'm not going to eat this as just a house plant, but it's very easy to do this with leafy greens. However, there's just so many crops, so many plants around the world that have never been to space, that has never been explored. And being here, we want to make sure that this is an international endeavor. We want to make sure that the space cuisine, if we may call it that, is something that all nations are a part of and that all nations contribute to. And so that's why we're really excited to be expanding this portfolio, because look, there's truly, just a few dozen different plants that have been grown. And so relating to the Space Oasis Student Challenge, they could be sending up, the first mango tree. They could be sending up the first fig tree. These are all, you won't be growing the whole tree on the International Space Station, but they could be doing the first germinations experiment. They could be doing the first, mango seeds in space. And so that's why we're so excited to be, putting these two together and allowing these students and allowing these research scientists to be truly pioneering some of this biological research. And that gets to our next work here in terms of these space germination experiments. So, we've touched on the idea of sending seeds to space, letting them be exposed to the space environment and bringing them back down and studying how they change. But we can also take that a step further and work with actually growing the plants in space. And so this can be, food crops. This can be simply flowers. This can be a whole number of different plants that, regardless of if it's towards agriculture, we still learn a lot. Even seeing how a flower grows in space, that's incredibly helpful for biologists on Earth to better understand, how do these plants adapt, and to better understand some of the, in the second bullet point there, the biological pathways, the hormone signaling that are changed in microgravity and deep space radiation. And this can be compared to a ground analog, in Bahrain, in here in Abu Dhabi. And we can work together to compare to that flight experiment. And this can also be another great student experiment working forward. And yeah, as mentioned, we want to make sure that we're working with specifically crops that are important to us here in the region, and making sure that, we're including all these different types of crops. So we're really excited on collaborating with everybody, and with you all specifically, on how we can make sure that these plants get to space as soon as we can, because there's a lot of great science to be done, and we're just scratching the surface. I do believe, I'm gonna pass it back to Mohammed.
Yeah, just to finish it off, I would like to reiterate the importance now of our expertise that Startup Waste is, our expertise is designing, mentoring, evaluating, and implementing the space agriculture, whether it be plants or food, in space, because we have the accessibility to ensure the full maturity of these projects, and also ensure, that valuable science is born. The possibilities, I know it's cliche to say it's endless, but as Ben has just shown, there are much fewer crops that have been grown than are necessary, So, we'd love to have some experiments where we investigate changes to genetics in underinvested crops or crops of national importance. And, it's not our expertise to be able to understand which crops these are, how to identify them, why exactly it is important to grow them, what we should look for in them. Our expertise, extends after that. Is once it's been designed, what are the individual components and other things that go into it. And obviously, the experiments can vary from crop improvement to just germination, to even just simple exposure and return to understand. Maybe there isn't a specific question in mind, and the question is more broad about how does the space environment affect, if at all. So yeah, some of the things that might be important to also mention is, budgets for the missions really vary depending on mission profile and duration. We've worked with clients to refine their projects and achieve maximum scientific value at reasonable rates. And this includes something as simple as, maybe using a mixed sticks for very small scale experiments, to going even further, using nanolabs that NanoRacks has available, or even conducting, customizable custom hardware for more, bespoke and more advanced research that needs to be conducted. So, we wouldn't like to limit anyone into any of the ideas they want to propose. Obviously, our expertise is here to help and say that, maybe this is a bit too far out there. Maybe this is something that isn't necessary to investigate at the moment, et cetera, et cetera. But really wouldn't want to limit the ideas coming out, because this is a new and niche field. Innovation is one of the key aspects. Just because something hasn't done before, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. So we need these constant ideas to keep flowing to understand. Obviously, within technical constraints, there are within the mission that a lot of plants, sadly, because of the volume constraints of the ISS, wouldn't be able to grow to full maturity. They would have to be grown to a bit, and then frozen, and then brought back for analysis. Others, maybe because of the length that it takes to grow, a sizable plant could only be germinated, and then after that, there would have to be a conducted analysis. So there are constraints on the plant side of things. So that is some things that we would have to think about when selecting the crop that needs to be investigated. But obviously, there are NASA regulations as well for payloads aboard the ISS that, quite honestly, Starlab Wastes and NanoRacks we frequently deal with. So we are more than well aware about what needs to go into it. And then last but not least, success of these projects is only possible based on mutual and frequent collaboration. So we want to have a constant pipeline of projects when we conduct with entities, whether it be here in the UAE or globally as well. And Bahrain is no different. We want to ensure that, we can have a project that sets the foundation. We do something, maybe not as complicated, maybe something simple, to get things going, and then we understand from the science, valuable science that came out of it, from the engagement that came out of it, from the success in the private-public partnership, we continue a stream of constant operations to use the space environment, because space is the next frontier. It's only getting easier and easier to access it, and the mysteries that lie behind space, how we can utilize it for the benefit of our life here on Earth, are also becoming more apparent every day. But we want to make sure that this is not an arena that is only being utilized by historical players like NASA, or new age players like the Chinese Space Agency. We want everyone to be involved, and that's what Starlab Oasis really is at the crux of it. So I think that concludes the presentation. I hope we gave as much information as we could, and I'm sure there must be a lot of questions that come stemming from this. Maybe a lot of people, this is the first time they've even heard about such things having happened before in the past and what we're proposing in the future. So we're more than open to hearing some questions, answering it. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Engineers Mohammed and Ben. That was a very interesting and informative session indeed. Audience, I would really appreciate if you have any question to just post it in the chat box. But for now, I have a question of myself. Since we have students from the medical background, are you aware of any experiment that was sent, let's say, talking about cancer cells or like genome? Do you have any idea?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So, we did touch a lot about different agricultural payloads, but first and foremost, we look to support space biology and looking at developing different closed environment conditions that can support investigating different microbes, investigating salmonella, for example. All of these are already proven to have very interesting growth characteristics and very interesting changes in their genomic structure, and very interesting changes in how they behave in space. And so we're looking to continue to push that envelope. So, regardless of if it's agriculture, medical, biofilms, biomanufacturing, biomining, there's a whole myriad of different topics that can be utilized through the space environment, and we welcome partnerships with all of these different groups.
Thank you. I believe Dr. Mariam Fida has a question. Mariam?
Hello, good evening. So first of all, thank you to all the speakers. This was amazing. I had no clue about all the projects that you were talking about, to be honest. And I'd like to thank Dr. Mohammed Asiri for inviting me. So my name is Mariam. I'm a consultant in medical genetics and also the director of the Bahrain Oncology Center Laboratory at King Hamad University Hospital. I was just wondering, how should we collaborate? This sounds really interesting. And since I'm a geneticist, I really find this very, very interesting, because as you know, in space nowadays, many of the projects are related to genetics and the genome. So yeah, my question is about,
this just an open question?
I don't know who's best to answer the question. So yeah, how would like us to collaborate, at which level?
Well, I can just say, maybe Mohammed, we can put our email into, you can put your email into the chat. Please reach out, because that's one of the most exciting parts of our job is getting all these different ideas from all these different backgrounds and seeing how we can collaborate. Because while we do have general knowledge specifically of space science, there's a lot of excellent topics and sectors that could be utilizing this space. And so we would love to learn more and see how we can collaborate. And sounds like, everybody just putting their emails in the chat box might honestly be the best approach. I don't know if Orbital Space, if you all have anything you want to add.
Sure,
Yeah.
I just did mine.
So thank you, Mariam, for the question. Yes, of course. So we work as a facilitator. So basically, we would work with you. You are the expert in genetics and cancer research. So we work with you in facilitating, taking your experiment as a payload on a space mission to space, where it can be done either as an automated experiment, so everything will be done automatically there, or we'll have one of the astronauts in space conduct the experiment on your behalf while in space. So it depends on the type of experiment and how much hardware involved in conducting the experiment, and if there are any human involvement required to conduct the experiment in space. But yes, of course, we have to start the discussion, and then based on the partnership, we figure out what's the best approach to achieve your objectives.
So basically, we design the experiment and just approach you with the idea. Is that how it works?
Well, we work in partnership, so we have to start the discussion from the beginning.
Sure.
Because you are the expert in the genetics and the science, and we know the space missions and space hardware, and we have to work together from the beginning, and then have mutual understanding so we can achieve the mission objective.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that would be the same with us as well. If you have something already fully fleshed out, we would love to, look at how we can very quickly get that online. Being able to be so close with NanoRacks, we can very quickly turn these over towards flight to the International Space Station, or we can also ideate and start something from the beginning.
Sure. Thank you.
I guess I can go
There's a
next.
question there for Melek and Emma in the chat about the E. coli experiment. I don't know if Melek and Emma are with us here. Melek, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just saying I'm here.
So we have a question from Faisal asking about genetic diversity that crops in space. He's saying, you mentioned that certain traits are acquired by the crops in space. Could you please highlight some of those traits and how they can be useful both on Earth?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Malek, you want to answer your question first, or we can jump in and do this one?
Yeah, so I think the question that was being asked was, why was the consumption of carbon dioxide in space more efficient than it was on Earth? The consumption of carbon dioxide was more efficient on Earth than it was in space. And that's because the independent variable of microgravity, which is the one that was conducted on space, was being applied and tested for. Microgravity adds a strain on the E. coli bacteria to be able to consume the carbon dioxide, and it puts this pressure on it in a way that the one on Earth, so with gravity, an environment with gravity, does not. And so for that reason, carbon dioxide is consumed better by the E. coli in Earth, just because it's in an environment that it's used to consuming carbon dioxide, and that strain is not applied on Earth as opposed to the one on space.
And then in terms of the crops question, Mohammed, do you want to jump in, or I got it?
You got it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So one, exciting example that we've seen is the Shanghai Institute of Biological Sciences have been reporting very encouraging results with sending their seeds to space and growing them in the Gobi Desert after being exposed to the space environment. So this has yet to be converted to a commercial setting, but they found that the crops and the seeds that they sent to space are actually performing quite well in these desert conditions. And so I guess specifically in terms of the traits, the ones that we're looking for specifically would be drought tolerance, heat tolerance, salinity tolerance, as all of these are seeing a rise, especially in the next 10 to 20 years. Looking at oil content for certain plants that are used for more of their vegetable oil as we move, towards a future of using some of these oils that can be grown from plants, sunflower oil, soybean oil. Looking at how we can increase the oil content would be very helpful for some of those farmers. And that's just kind of more the broad terms. A lot of these plants might find more efficient harvesting patterns, hypothetically, if they're shorter. If you shift their flowering and fruiting seasons slightly, that can do wonders for the farmers in order to make sure that they get a full harvest in time. So there's any number of different traits that we're investigating that we've been sending with our seeds that we're going to be looking into, that we're looking at here in our lab in Abu Dhabi that we're going to be identifying for. But a lot of them are very plant specific. But I think, just to answer your question, the ones that we've looked at so far and the ones that we've seen success in the Gobi Desert is with that drought and heat tolerance.
If I'd just also like to add on top of that, there's a lot obviously that hasn't been done, but there's also a lot that has been done. The science also does have a backing to it. And we often, when we are discussing with more technical and science literate individuals, we often share with them resources on previous papers that analysis has been done throughout the world on the effects that the space environment has on these plants. So please, if you'd like access to those papers that we could share with you to showcase of what are the sort of changes that we're expecting to get, what is our science based off of, please shoot us an email and we'd be more than happy to share the papers that we've collected that inform our decisions.
In same manner, Engineer Mohammed, is there like a I don't know, like a website or a link that the students or the academics or the research centers can go to and like have more ideas about, let's say, the previous that has been done? I mean, generally, whether it is from Starlab Oasis or from NASA or board the ISS, just to, I don't know, like scratch their thoughts into having more ideas, getting more interested in this.
Yes, so on our website, I think, we try to link as many of these papers, as many of the projects that we would like to do, and as many, and our social media, we're often posting, keeping it up to date on what are the new experiments, even if Starlab Oasis is not conducting them. Like, for example, very recently, hummus was sent up to the ISS, so even though we're not involved in that experiment, we often post on our social media to explain, this happened very recently, these are the updates that are coming through, etc. So I'd say one of the best, obviously, would be look at our website, look at some of the social media we post, and for even more in-depth, please definitely just reach out to us via email. We can even schedule a call, but even through email correspondence, we can share with you much more information.
And I can see that Ben already posted the website, so thank you so much, Ben. Yeah. We have a question from Atiyatullah, I think. Yeah, Dosari. What are some of the experiments ideas that have already been conducted or any that may be coming in the near future? I believe that you have already came across it. Can you just like summarize it like in brief?
So if I might add here that, a space environment is relatively new, and rest assured that if there are any science that's being done in space, that will be published in the scientific literature. So if you search in the scientific literature, you will find many of the research that has been conducted in space, whether it's in the medicine or medical field or agriculture, engineering, you name it. If somebody have done something, they'll be very proud to publish it. So if you search in the scientific literature, you will find a lot of information for the things that has been done already. But I want to also say that there's a lot still to be done. We're still considered new to space, and there's a lot of things that could be done in space. So if you have an idea, don't be hesitant, bring it forward, and you never know. You might contribute to new knowledge to the scientific community. globally, not just only in Bahrain.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You know, one thing that we talk about a lot at Starlab Oasis is there's two great times to get involved in the space industry, and that was in the 60s, you know, when we were first going to the moon, and then now. And I would argue that now is even more exciting because space has become around for everybody to get involved in. This is something that we have, you know, not just aerospace engineers, not just, you know, orbital mechanics scientists. This can be something that everybody gets involved in. And so we're really excited to be on the cusp of this and including everybody here. So it's a really great time to be a student looking at this right now. And we hope to make sure that everybody can be included as we move forward here.
Thank you so much. And we have a question of a different type, actually. It's from Pooja. She says, engineer, does the tech engineer or researchers play in terms of Starlab Oasis? How their role look like in terms of AI or automated operations?
Yeah, I can touch on this and I'll hand it off to Mohammed. But as mentioned, you know, there's room for everybody here. And we're really excited to be involving everybody. You know, with vertical farming, this is something that you need AI, you need robotics, you need automation, because if we're going to be sending astronauts to the moon and Mars, we need to make sure that their growth systems for their food is pretty much on autopilot, because, you know, it's a lot of work to be growing a full diet of food. And so we want to make sure that that can be on remote control as possible, as automated as possible, because the astronauts are going to be busy. You know, we often think about resources in terms of power, mass, volume, but astronaut time will probably be one of the most valuable resources that we bring forward. And so we need to make sure that we automate a lot of these systems, and a lot of those systems, as Mohammed mentioned, will have that transfer back down here on Earth, and will be huge. I'll pass off to Mohammed maybe to expand on that.
I think you covered it perfectly, but also just a bit on the personal level about, you know, what being an engineer at Starlab Oasis is. Quite frankly, I think it's super exciting because of the fact that it's a niche field. We're a new company really getting out there, is that we have the flexibility to do a lot of activities because we are a small team in a new niche growing field, but also the expertise through our teammates and our backing in American companies. So it's the best of both worlds. As examples, if we were to approach, you know, obviously we are a private company. So one of our biggest things is, aside from, you know, making sure we're getting the best science operations as well, it's going out there, getting the money to conduct these projects, you know, and that's also how the space environment is growing. SpaceX isn't a government corporation, you know, they're a private company. Obviously, they started a bit with the help of government, but right now they're really changing the entire aerospace space landscape, showing us that privatization is the way forward, because, you know, that's where innovation is. That's where, you know, things happen faster, people work together. So on that side of things, we can approach maybe or be approached by a client, a government institute, or even a project like this. And quite honestly, we sit down at the drawing board and say, what do we want to do and how do we do it? Let's pick a crop, maybe not this one. Let's pick another one. Why would we do this one? Maybe someone comes with a specific crop. We're like, all right, how can we grow something like that? What are the constraints, etc.? What would we need to design to be able to facilitate that? So we're really starting from the drawing board, using our previous expertise of, you know, projects that Ben and Connor have conducted before, and what we know is accessible in the space world. But then from there, the payloads are really new. You know, how to grow maybe something like I mentioned, a chickpea is going to be very different to how to grow a potato. So you need to understand all of those different constraints, how to be able to do these different types of activities. Missions are going to be different. Some people want to go to the moon, others on the ISS, others maybe on you know, analogs here on Earth. How do we facilitate and ensure, you know, you're getting the best science for each one of them? So it's really an open field where ideas are flowing around, where we work together to come up with, you know, what is the best thing with our capabilities that will give us, you know, the most innovation, the most new science, but the most valuable science. So very exciting arena to be in right now, honestly.
And I would like to add to my friends Mohammed and Ben that in space, all disciplines are needed, regardless, whether engineers, scientists, business, psychology, medicine, all disciplines are needed when it comes to space sector. Even petroleum engineers are somehow useful in the space sector.